longtime place kicker in this league and a national champion from his days on the campus at the University of Michigan. Jay Feely here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Jay?
I'm good. You got the most important stat in at the end. Go Blue.
That's right. And we'll talk about that before I let you go, because there's some family business to be settled in East Lansing in a few days from now.
Yes, sir.
What'd you think when you saw that final last night, the finale with Catanzaro and Hauschka missing?
Oh, I was shocked, as everybody was. I mean, I don't know the answer to this, Rich. You got to get your crack crew on to find out when has two kickers ever missed field goals inside of 30 yards, game-winning field goals in the same game. I don't know that that's ever happened in the history of the NFL. You know, you look at Catanzaro had never missed one inside of 30 yards in his career, and Stephen Hauschka has been phenomenal throughout his career, really one of the best kickers in the NFL. Interesting this year, though, his only two missed field goals are inside of 30 yards. He's perfect over 30 yards for the year, and now he's had two misses inside of 30 yards. But just shocking that they would both miss in overtime.
So which one was worse?
Well, I think Catanzaro's was because Arizona should have won that game. I mean, you get an opportunity. I think he missed because of Wagner. It was in his head. He had jumped over and got the block before. You could tell his form was off. He was trying to rush it. His head came up, his chest came up, and he pulled across. And just like a golf swing, if you come up early, you hook across it. That's why he missed that kick. And for Arizona to come away with the tie was just brutal for them. But the fact that Seattle got life and they get down and their kicker, who's been almost 90% for his career, has one of the worst kicks I've ever seen. I mean, I put a picture on Twitter of the kick of where the ball was. This is a 28-yard field goal in the middle of the field inside in a dome, and that ball didn't even hit the net. It was just a dead shank.
Yeah. So you still think Catanzaro is worse, even though you're posting pictures of a ball that didn't even hit the net from 28 yards out?
That kick is one of the worst kicks I've ever seen.
Wow.
But it was worse in the fact for Arizona. Seattle shouldn't have won that game. For them to come away with a tie, they got beat all game. Arizona, when you look at any of the measurables, yards, time of possession, what they did defensively to Seattle shouldn't have won that game. So for them to come away with a tie, they can feel decent about it, whereas Arizona, it absolutely feels like a loss today.
Jay Feely joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. And NBC, when Hauschka trotted out for the game tire, not in overtime but in regulation, they showed about how that building, University of Phoenix Stadium, is the worst for him. Is that possible that a building can get in a kicker's head, Jay?
For sure. Absolutely. You have a place, and there's no reason for that. It's always good turf. It's always a place where you're kicking inside, so you don't have the weather to factor in. But some places can get in your head. Seattle was always a tough place for me to kick. I had my worst game of my career there and ended up getting spoofed on Saturday Night Live by Dane Cook. And then every time you go back there, in the back of your mind, you're thinking about that. And Hauschka, in the back of his mind, every time he goes to Arizona, he's thinking about all those missed kicks and the opportunities that he left out there, because he's been, outside of Arizona, the best kicker in the NFL, in his time in Seattle. He's been excellent. He's been a Pro Bowl kicker, but he has a thing about that field, and you saw it on that dead shank.
Well, I mean, and Arian said about Catanzaro after the game that you're professional. You got to make it, baby, is what he basically said. Just make it. You're paid to make these kicks. Do you think Catanzaro's because, again, week one, could have won that one against New England. Do you think he's in danger of losing his gig in Arizona, Jay?
I would say not right now, not yet, but he can't continue to miss. And they've lost 3 games because of special teams. They lost the New England game when they had an opportunity to kick a game winner, had a kind of a bad snap, but the holder did a good job getting up, and Catanzaro missed it. And then obviously this game, and then the Buffalo game, they're coming back, and their snapper snaps it over the holder's head on a field goal. Buffalo returns it for a touchdown, and they were going to cut it to 7, and all of a sudden it becomes a 17-point lead, and that game's over. And so you're Arizona, and you're looking at special teams errors continually. I think, everybody on that special team, not just Catanzaro. Amos Jones, the special teams coach, his job's probably in jeopardy. When you don't win in the NFL and when you have an opportunity to make plays that are game winners and you don't come through, your job's in jeopardy.
And what do you think of Bobby Wagner's plays. Do you think those should be outlawed, coming over the top like that?
No, I don't. I mean, it's your job as a guard to protect your snapper if he's low and the ability to jump over. All you have to do is get a wing up. And they did that on the game-winning attempt in overtime. The left guard, Watford, got his right hand up and put it up in the air and didn't allow Wagner to jump over. It's interesting, though, the leverage plays. And I heard Chris Collinsworth talk about it, and they were saying that if he touched him, if he grazed him, that's illegal. That wasn't actually true. The reality of the rule is that if it's incidental at all, the contact, then it's not supposed to be leverage. I thought the one in overtime, so the one that he blocked, I didn't think at all was leverage. And Dean Blandino said that. The one in overtime, he puts his left hand on his teammate, and he puts his right hand on an opponent as he's jumping over. Wagner does. And even though Dean Blandino says that contact was made after he jumped, and so that is incidental, he's not using leverage, he's not propelling himself off of them, I think that's creating balance. And so to me, that's leverage. And I thought that one should have been called.
And then lastly on this one, what does Hauschka and Catanzaro do when they get back into their locker rooms? What is that feeling like, Jay?
It's the worst feeling in sports. That day after you miss a game winner is the worst feeling in sports because, every coach in that locker room, every player in that locker room knows that if you did your job, especially a field goal inside of 30 yards, that the feeling in that locker room is different. Whenever you have a loss, it's like a morgue for that Monday in the locker room. But when you're the direct reason for that, and people always have said to me whenever I miss a game winner, well, it's a team game, and while that may be true, you have the opportunity to win the game. And so I always felt it was my fault. If I had an opportunity to make a game winner and I didn't do it, it was my fault. And that's the reality of the position, and you get to celebrate and go crazy when you make a game winner. When you miss a game winner, it's on you. And there's no worse feeling in sports. You don't feel like looking anybody in the eye. You don't want to talk to anybody. You don't really want anybody to pat you on your back because that just makes you feel worse. You got to grin and bear it, and you got to go into that meeting room when you watch the film, and you're just sitting in your seat waiting for the time where they show that opportunity, which they got to do, and they're going to look at the film and talk about it, and you just got to grin and bear it and get through that day. And then Tuesday, you stop thinking about it and you move on, and you try not to let it impact you going forward.
Well, all right, Jay Feely, it's been a year since a disastrous special teams breakdown that will always haunt me ruined Jim Harbaugh's first shot at beating Michigan State at Michigan Stadium. Now comes the rematch. 7-0, it's 2 overall now. I mean, taking on Michigan State. What is, last one for you, you and the rest of the national champion Wolverine alumni base from the 90s saying about what Harbaugh's doing right now in Ann Arbor?
Well, from day one, and you know this, Rich, when he took over, he made Michigan relevant. There wasn't a lot of talk nationally about Michigan for 8-9 years, since 2006. And he made them relevant, and you heard about Michigan every single day, whether it was recruiting stunts or, everything that he did, he had Michigan talked about nationally, and then he's followed up on the field, and you see the results, and he's done a phenomenal job recruiting, and he's taking these players that Brady Hoke wasn't using as well as he probably could have, and he's gotten the most out of them, and he's just done an unbelievable job. And the records don't matter, and you know that the records don't matter when you play Michigan State or you play Ohio State. I was there when Ohio State was undefeated twice, and we came in with 3 losses and 4 losses and beat them 2 years in a row. The records don't matter in those games, but this game has so much significance just to announce that Michigan is for real. Yes, we're ranked number 2, and we got the best defense in the country, but you got to go beat Michigan State, and then you got to go down and you got to beat Ohio State.
Yeah, and then don't have any kicking game issues like we had against Wisconsin. I mean, the young man who is trying to kick field goals right now is terrific punting, by the way.
It's hard to do all three. It really is. They're different mechanics. They don't work together. They actually work against each other. What you want to do in punting is opposite of what you want to do in field goal kicking. So that's why you don't see anybody in the NFL, as good as all these kickers are, as good as the talent that they have, you don't see anybody in the NFL doing all three because it's wear and tear on your leg. It's hard to practice enough all week long to get to the point where you're ready for the game because you get tired, your leg gets tired, you're not as good, and then the mechanics work against each other. So I think if they were able to make a change at that kicking position, they would. They got the number one recruit in the country, Quinn Morgan, but he's been hurt. So he's going to have to make field goals in these games, in these critical games, no question.
Jay, take care of yourself, man. We'll chat soon. Thanks for coming on.
All right, Rich.
You got it. Jay
Good
Feely
talking
of
to you.
Same here. That's Jay Feely of CBS Sports at Jay Feely on Twitter.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.